Okay, good evening, no, morning, everybody. Oh my God, I have no concept of time here at all, as usual. Today we welcome an amazing Anne with us, who is going to explain a bit about her story. She's got a beautiful book as well, and she's been doing this for a long time. So, Anne, over to you. Explain who you are, where you come from. Actually, that
Thank
could
you.
that conversation could be a long time, couldn't it? Where did you come from?
Well, yes, indeed. It could go on forever. Um, but I will say, first and foremost, you just mentioned about the concept of time. And I love that you are where you are in the morning and I am here at 8 o'clock at night on the other side of the world. I'm in Australia, of course, but I do work with clients all around the world. So
Mm,
just to introduce myself a little, I'm a mystic and I'm also the elite voice channel for all that is. And I give a voice to the power within, creating transformation through the vibrational frequency of the spoken and the written word. And really, most of my focus is on guiding change makers to really become what I call unfuckwithable,
mm,
untriggerable, so that nothing outside of them takes them off their path, so that they can, really ramp up their personal power and find and then do their purpose in the world, which is to first become and then lead the change that they want to see in the world. So,
mm.
and I'm also, as you mentioned, the author of the best-selling book, Mind Your Own Vibration, the Unfuckwithable. And it really just talks about how to first change yourself by doing your healing work and stepping into oneness and unconditional love and these sorts of airy fairy concepts, but actually embodying them, not just knowing about them, but embodying them so that you can kind of create change in the world first through yourself, because
Mm.
I talk a lot about oneness. And the only way to change the world is to change yourself.
Mhm.
So that's really what I'm all about.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And like, how did you actually get into this? I mean, where did it all begin for you?
Oh, gosh, it was about 15 years ago. So a couple of years before that, I was married. I was in an unhappy marriage. I had a small child, and I also had a teenager who was about to finish school, 17 years between the two of them.
Mm.
And as I said,
Wow,
I was
that's a huge
in
gap.
it is a huge gap. There were a couple of miscarriages and things like that in between the
Uh,
two. I finally got the two. And unfortunately, I lost one of them earlier this year, but that's another story.
oh wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. Anyway, I'm happy to talk about that, but I'll just quickly talk about how this all happened for me.
Sure.
I've been in corporate. I've been working in financial in the mining industry,
Mm.
and I was unhappy in my marriage. I left all of that to have my child. I stayed at home with him, and I divorced. And I just was still not happy. I just couldn't find happiness. So I decided, you know what? In fact, I didn't decide. Someone said to me, you can actually choose to be happy. And I got really angry. I really wanted to punch him in the face. Because I mean, if I'd known that, why was I still not doing anything about it? If I knew that I
Mm.
could be happy, how the hell do you find that? So I actually decided that I was going to find out how to be happy. And I started
Wow.
reading books on happiness. I started going to things like the happiness conference that we have here in Australia with the Dalai Lama. I think it's all around the world, actually. And I went to one where the Dalai Lama was one of the main speakers, amongst many other people who talk about happiness. And I read all the books I could find on happiness. And guess what they all told me? They all told me the same thing. The way to find happiness was to meditate,
Yeah.
right? Every single one of them, that was the one thing they all had in common. They shared heaps of different things, but every single one of them also talked about meditation.
Mm.
So I thought, well, I'm going to give that a go. And I couldn't. It was horrendous for me to shut my mind off and do the meditation that the way that they suggested that I do it. But I did eventually find a way to do it. But my meditation didn't turn out the way that other people's meditation did. Because after a couple of months of doing the meditation the way that I'd figured out how to do it for myself, I started to hear a voice, and it was like it was outside of me, but it was also inside of me.
Mm.
And every single time I'd sit and start my meditation, I would hear the words, "We are all that is, all that was, and all that ever will be."
Mm.
I freaked out. I actually thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I'd been incorporating anything about spirituality. The most I'd ever done with spirituality was, I think, once at the markets, the local markets, I had my palm read. That was as
Yeah.
far as I'd gone, right? So
Wow.
I thought I was losing my mind. So I came across someone who was a channel, and I thought, okay, I'll have a look into this. So I started looking, and became familiar with quite a few channels across the world, and realized that that's what I was going to do. But over and above that, I started to realize that they wanted to use my voice to speak.
Mm.
You know, there was this sense that they were trying to come through all the time. Eventually they did. I found a group of people who held space for me to allow that to happen, because it was terrifying.
I
You
bet.
know, to let
Especially when
go.
you've not had a
Oh,
history of it, or you've not been, and you've been so
yeah,
deep in your unhappiness and probably
yeah,
trauma, and trying
yeah,
to search for something external to you as well. Like you went to all these
yeah,
groups, you
yeah,
know?
absolutely. And also, the turning point was, I got to the point where I had no purpose. I had no sense of purpose in life. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, and I used to go to sleep at night asking, reaching, it's essentially saying to God or to the universe or whatever, tell me what I'm here to do.
Mm.
Just tell me what I'm here to do. And then that's when it started to ramp up a little bit, and I started to realize that there was healing work for me to do, and there was this voice channeling. So as I said, I found people to hold space for me,
Mm.
and I started to do it, and then it started to come out and speak through me, and taught me all of the things that are contained in this book,
Mm.
and then instructed me that I was to spend the next decade becoming the frequency of these teachings.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I've done as I've taught them to other people and used them in my work, essentially becoming the frequency of them, because what I know, so stop me anytime you want to ask a question, because I'll just keep going.
Sure. No, go for it.
My purpose. So they showed me my purpose, and when I say they showed it to me, I mean that they took me on essentially a journey. Some people might refer to it as a shamanic journey. They took me on a journey into the future where I actually witnessed the world in peace.
Yeah.
And when
Beautiful.
I came back, I had these words in my head, and they also felt like they'd been kind of stamped into my heart.
Mm.
And it was a statement that said, world peace through inner peace, one person at a time.
Mm.
And it starts with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I had to embody it first, because I had to
Mm.
become the frequency of peace so that I could help one person at a time, or a group of people at a time, to find that inner peace, to become untriggerable, unfuckwithable, and then through doing that, that's really the ripple effect, right? The way
Mm.
we want peace in the world, a peaceful world, and this is what they showed me, is that each person has to find that within themselves, and then it creates that ripple effect, and then there's no
Mm.
need for the kind of stuff that's happening in the world today. So
Yeah.
that's my mission, and I'm so there's nothing else in my world right now except be peace, be peace, be peace, show other people peace, help other people find that inner peace. And that's how we're going to change the world. Now, for me, mine is about the world peace. I work with so many people who have their own version of that. But it's always, what I've noticed is it's always something that will contribute to people finding inner peace.
Mm.
It's to do with, people having enough financial freedom. It's to do with people helping homeless people, and all of the things that are contributing now to people not having peace in their life. We have to all come together and do whatever part of that we're here to do, to create this world in peace. But I live now with this sense and this knowing that it's inevitable that we're going to have peace in the world. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, but it'll happen in a lifetime that I'm in some way part of, because we're all part of one, right? So, and I'm okay with that. I'm good with that.
But the thing is, I would say, like, you've already been the catalyst to begin this new world. So I refer to it as creating the pathways to the new earth. Like, we're going to create a world based on the frequency of unconditional love and acceptance, and the share of energy, rather than very focused on the external. So I love that your work is pretty much aligned to everything that we do. I love that. It's so important to meet people, I think, that have that alignment and know that you're a part of the big wheel. You're part of the creation.
Yeah, well, I love that you say that, because oftentimes in the spiritual circles, in the spiritual area, you find people talking about, those who are asleep and those who are awake. But for me, every single person that's on this planet right now is here with the purpose of creating change in the world, even though they look like they're trying to make it worse.
Yeah, exactly.
So I try to live. I try to think of, to be in that space all the time as much as I can. So there's no one who's doing something bad. They're just playing their purpose in the world.
I believe that as well. So, like, when I'm working with our clients and we talk about, these people that have come in to trigger them and have been these kind of narcissistic energy vampire types that we label people with, which I'm not that keen on, to be honest, myself. But we give them a label in human terms because it allows people's minds to resonate, right? But
Yes.
I always say to them, look, this person has given you this beautiful opportunity to be triggered so fucking deeply to the depths of your soul, right?
Say thank you.
Yeah, be fucking grateful.
No, I so agree. And I talk about that in the book, that every single thing that triggers you is an actual gift that you get to receive if you're willing to do that. If you can step beyond what you think you know and into this place of, that's triggered something in me. I need to go in and find out what that is and do whatever I need to do with it so that it doesn't have to happen again. So I don't have to be triggered again. So that's what I've spent the last decade doing for myself and helping other people do as well.
That's so beautiful, because I think, like you, triggers, I always refer to them as just like warning lights on the car. Your oil light comes on your car, your petrol light comes on, you go and explore it and you get an expert to help you with it, or you do the work yourself. It's just that. But there's so much shame. I don't know if you feel this, Anne. There's so much shame around the words like trigger, ego. But I just see them all as tools, as things that you can use to work on yourself.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy. That's very clever. never like that. But no, I absolutely agree with you. There are a lot of people who see it as someone else's problem, or what, it's always the other person and these sorts of things. So I try to convince people all the time, no, there ain't no one else. This is you creating a gift for yourself, a trigger for yourself, because the true you, just wants to expand into more. And the way for you to do that is to trigger yourself by someone outside of you doing something or observing something out there going on out there in the world, and having something be triggered within you. It's such a gift.
What would you say was one of your biggest triggers that you had to work through, and what were some of the things that helped you kind of navigate through that?
Okay, so my thing as I discovered very early on, once I started realizing that, you know what, there's this different part of me, and I don't have to be who I've always been. And if I don't like who I've always been, I've got to find out why. I had a very big wounding around not being enough. And it's so common, right?
So common.
Oh, so common. And it can be triggered every minute of every bloody day if you're unconscious.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is or who it is or anything. If you've got those sorts of woundings around your self-worth, they're just triggered all the time. And going into business for yourself, even, you know, that sense of not enough, it stops you from charging enough. It stops you from asking people to work with you. It just holds you so far back. So I discovered a process whereby to retrain my brain away from it. And I used to set alarms on my mobile phone, on my cell phone, that went off every single hour. And I had a label that said, I am enough.
Yeah.
And I made myself say it. So every hour the alarm went off, I picked up my phone, I said, I am enough, turned the alarm off.
Yeah.
And I was playing with it, you know, to see if it would work. And then one day I was in the shower, shampoo in my hair, washing my hair. I found myself in my head having an argument with my ex-husband. This was 10 years after I left him.
Yeah.
An argument in my head with him, trying to convince him that I was right about something that we probably argued about 10 years before. And then I thought to myself, I actually said out loud, why am I doing this? And I heard that voice in my head say, because you think you're not enough.
Yeah. So you got to be right.
Yeah. And then there was this switch. I felt the switch in my brain, and I started hearing the voice of my brain, you know, that unconscious voice that you hear that tells you how crap you are at everything and tells you everything you've ever done wrong. It just runs around your brain the whole time. I heard it switch, and I heard it start saying, I am enough, I am enough, I am enough, I am enough. And I realized that through doing the alarms, I had actually changed that voice in my head. And the key for me was in saying it out loud in my own voice, I had been commanding my brain, stop saying that thing that you say and say this instead. And so that's the tool, that's one of the tools that I used for a long time, to change those belief systems, you know, because beliefs, honestly, we have been so trained to believe so many wrong things about ourselves, about everyone else, and about everything else. So I did a lot of unlearning, and I now help people to unlearn everything that they've been taught to be true and actually step into the real truth of it.
Yeah.
You know, which was oneness and unconditionality.
And that's what I always say to people. Like, I personally don't resonate with the terms like awakening and enlightenment, because I think those labels have an association of needing to be true. And like you said, when you go into the depths of that, that could be from I am not enough. Like, why do you need to get to the ending to prove that you've got a label? So I always say it's about going on a process of deep remembering and unlearning, because we are absolutely infinite and in everything. The truth is, you know, it's just that our human brain, and the other thing, the brain just controls the body so much. So we teach a lot of somatic processes, you know, how to use your own body and your heart and the sensations. And if I could cut my head off and still live, I think I probably would.
Oh, yes, no, that's exactly right. I so agree with you. It's, you know, and with the work that I do with people's emotional trauma, with their trauma, which then creates a feeling inside them, which then also creates a matching belief or a meaning about the situation that they start to believe about themselves. And one of the things that I say is that you've been living with these aspects of you or these parts of you that believe this or that feel this and have never expressed it for so long And they've been controlling you without you knowing it. They're the things that are attracting like magnets, the same sort of behavior over and over again, like that Groundhog Day. Or like, every time you get a new boyfriend, he's actually exactly the same as the last one. And
Yeah.
these sorts of things. That's what's attracting those. That's what's magnetizing those. So for your mind, your brain, your ego, and your body, it's safe because you're so used to it. So the minute that you try to get out of it, they really take a hold of you and try to stop you from changing. So you have to just keep moving through it. And moving is really key to it. Action, taking a step forward, body movement, all of these things, really key to it, for sure.
Oh, definitely. And one of the things that we teach is like almost not learning stuff. So I don't like teaching people or giving them loads of information. I just say, ask yourself what your next step is, and then take that one next step and just keep doing that. You'll always find your next step if you do that. And I think a lot of people out in the spiritual community are still very much in the consuming mode. I think because we've been programmed from a young
Yes.
age to go to school, to learn the times tables, to read books. Everyone is consuming rather than thinking, does that resonate with me? And I think that is a major issue. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do. And, it's triggered a thought within me because I'm currently moving into a space of, it's about the modalities and certificates that are,
Mm,
so there's so many and so many options, and people who think they have to get a certificate before they can go and do the work that is naturally wanting to come through them. So
yeah.
I have a think about that.
Yeah, go on.
And then so I'm going to actually start I next year I'm actually going to have some sort of community
Mm,
where I can help people to step into their natural abilities
mm,
without the need of the certifications and things like that, because I truly believe that our work, when it comes from just who we are and we allow it to flow through, not
mm,
being taught by someone else, I think we're beyond that now.
mm.
I think the way of the future, or the way of now, because I always think of the future and now as the same thing.
Same.
I really believe that when we start doing our inner work, when we connect into who we really are, when we have experiences where we do see the future and things like that, and then we become present in the now moment
Mm,
with our past and our future, we can bring all the gifts that we are
mm,
moving into this moment right here, right now, but not in the way they've always been. And I
mm,
think we're doing ourselves a disservice as a race of human beings who are evolving by constantly demanding of others that they take the course that's been done 10 years ago or
mm,
20 years ago, or Reiki, in the 80s that
mm.
was so big here in Australia.
Yeah.
Um, because I really believe we've moved past so many of these things, and it's now about becoming who you really are, which is at one with everything,
Mm,
at one with all the knowledge in the universe. And that's why when All That Is used to say to me, and they still do, we are all that is, all that was, and all that ever will be, and
mm,
so are you. What they mean is that everything that's ever existed in the past or in the future or even now is, we can access it.
mm,
So all these things we imagine about the future that we're going to create, we can access right now, including the gifts that we will have in the future,
mm.
like light healing through our fingertips and all sorts of incredible things. I don't even know that I could imagine what they might be. But it doesn't have to come with a certificate from someone who teaches you something that they brought through 10 years ago.
Mm,
What they brought through 10 years ago has evolved. And are
yeah.
they evolving along with it? Which is why I don't really hold on to too much.
Yeah.
Have an experience in the moment, and then sure, the next moment I'm like, oh, what did I just do? What came through?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really think that's an important conversation to start having. And of course, there's backlash against that from so many in that community.
Oh
Because, as you say, we step into a belief system.
Mm.
The only truth is what you believe, right? So
Mm.
we step into a belief system that, we're spiritual or we're not spiritual, or we've got the latest, the best tool to use or whatever. And
Mm.
we just make that our comfort zone. So therefore, we're not still evolving. And
Mm.
I think it's really important that spiritual community and people who are doing whatever work they're doing don't hold tight to it. You've got to
Mm.
hold it loosely and let it become more, because that's the whole point.
Mm.
Everything that is created wants to become more.
Mm.
And we have to allow that. That will create rapid shift in the world.
It will. I had to download. My team was saying 5 days ago, but I have no concept of time like you. And they shared the same message as you. Meditation and hypnotherapy and Reiki are all things of the past, but they're outdated, and we're going to be creating our own modalities, but based on our own gifts, stepping into them, evolving into them. And also,
Yes.
the other thing that came through was another layer of healing on top of that was through sharing stories. So, this is my story, which is really quite powerful if you think about it, because, like you said, people expect that they need to learn a certification or go on a course and they need to give it some time. But actually, everybody is a natural healer because everybody has a story of empowerment, of something that they've gone through, even if it was only yesterday that they went through it. And that story is one of the things we've lost a handle on. Back in Aboriginal times, for example, everyone would just sit around, wouldn't they, sharing stories and healing
Yep.
each other. But we don't do that now. Most people are fixated on a TV or the media. I don't tap into either. I don't even own a TV, which people always find a bit weird. But hey ho, I am weird in a good way. um, but it's really quite fascinating that you are receiving and have those really strong embedded same aligned beliefs, and I love that all the
Yeah.
messages are really filtering through now.
Yeah, and that's what's important, right? Because and this is also why it's so important that we start talking about these things, because maybe you were sitting there, maybe I was sitting here going, oh, ooh, other people don't really believe this.
Mm.
So maybe I shouldn't start talking about what if someone says, trolls me or blah, 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 blah. But
Mm.
by having these conversations, we let other people, we have to be the first one to go, you know what? I'm the weirdest person in the room and this is what I believe.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people say to me all the time, oh my gosh, I believe that too. Or, oh, that happened to me as well. And that's been
Mm.
going on for a very, very long time, but it's really speeding up probably since 2020, the COVID situation that
COVID.
happened.
Yeah.
Massive awakening around
Oh
that time.
yeah.
Of course, why else would it have happened, right?
Yeah, it was the catalyst for the new earth
Yeah,
to be created. And it's funny how so many people, even a lot of spiritual people that I've spoken to, actually see COVID as a very dark time. But I was just like, it opened so many people's eyes to what was really going on, like the murky stuff as well, that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And I'm like, I'll talk about everything. I'll stay in the light, but I understand the fucking dark exists because I've had attachments that have been very, very serious. I've lived
yeah.
through that, and that's why I'm here doing this work, because of that. But a lot of spiritual people are still in the love and light, and you just got to focus on love and light. And I think we actually need it all, right?
Well, that's exactly right. We have to have those who really hold to that love and light. And I actually think that I'm very much love and light, but I'm also very grounded in it.
Mm.
And I think it's the groundedness that makes the difference. I
Mm.
think people who, there's the airy fairy type spiritual people. They're up in the air. They're not grounded with it. When you're grounded with it, there's a depth of reality to it. At the
Mm.
same time, you can still be that love and light, but it's grounded in reality. It's not off with the fairies, so to speak. You know, all those ways that people say mean things about New Age people.
Yeah.
All
Although
those
my
words.
fairy team is saying, please don't use that phrase because
Oh,
we
yes, of course.
I love the fairies,
Oh,
by
of
the way.
course. Yeah, no, of course, yes. I see that, absolutely.
Oh,
Amazing. I was going to tell you about, you know, you mentioned attachments and things like that.
mm,
Um, and one of the stories that I love to tell is, in actual fact, about something my client believed that I didn't believe in.
mm,
So, a particular alien race that enslaves people, right? I
mm,
had no belief in them. I did believe they exist. I'm still kind of in a place of, I'd still, you know, whatever. That was her belief. But anyway, the point being that she came to me to do some healing work. And I did one of my transformational conversation sessions with her. And as we were talking, I was bringing through, because I have the ability to bring through a lot of different um, energy
mm,
streams, so to speak. So, you know, sometimes Jesus will show up, sometimes Archangel Michael, sometimes someone's grandmother who's
mm,
passed. Sometimes a person's group star family will come through,
mm,
all sorts of different things. So I'm used to that. But I was in this session with this woman, and all of a sudden I could feel and see through my third eye this being, this alien being here.
mm,
And she was telling me at the time about her experience as a small child being enslaved and the problem with her neck and these sorts of things that was involved with that. I swear to God, this being showed up right next to me, right? But
mm,
there was this real noticeable partition between us,
mm,
which was, I understand now, that was because it wasn't my belief system, it was her belief system.
mm,
And it wasn't meant to be my belief system moving forward, but he had to be there to have the conversation with her through me
mm,
that he had about releasing her. And in that moment, you know, she healed a lot of the situations that she'd been going through since she was little. And
mm,
she'd been to so many healers for, and, you know, they would all just tisk, oh, you know, that's just, and counselors and normal kind of mental health people would just
mm,
dismiss it. And of course I might have. In fact, I think I probably did have those moments of dismissing it until
mm.
he showed
Yeah.
up. So that was something really weird and freaky that happened to me that I don't know why I just thought to share with you, because as I say, I'm all love and light, and I tend towards more of the I don't experience attachments and things like that. I don't see them. I don't experience things of those natures. But, and also love, you know, dead people. I don't know how to say it any other way. I don't experience them in the way that many other people do. They often come through in channeling, but it's a different experience for me than for someone who does mediumship and things like that.
Mm,
Um, so that's why I still think of myself as love and light, but very grounded, because I know that other people experience these things, and I don't dismiss it simply because it's not my experience.
mm.
So that was going like that, because it feels almost like it's happening right now. Just
Yeah, I know. I feel it there as well. I've
yeah,
got a door as well that's perspex. I'm like, no, I don't believe in that either. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think in my darkest days, I was 100% certain that I could have these attachments, you know. But as I've moved through that and the experience of that and removing them, I know now that they cannot attach with to me because I'm a sovereign being, and that's the space that I want to
exactly.
move people through to. So yes, I do know they exist because they exist
Yeah,
in the belief, and I've seen them. When I had mine, for example, they want me to just share now.
yeah.
I They gave me this tool which we use now to this day at the Cosmic Surgery, called the mirror selfie, where if you turn your flash on your phone, you can actually see the attachments in the mirror, which is quite fascinating. And for
Ooh, that's
me, yeah, I'll
wow.
send it you after if you want to see it. But for me, you could clearly see this demonic head attached to my head in the mirror. And so
Right.
I've seen them with my eyes, I've felt them,
Yeah,
I've experienced them, so I know that they exist. But now I have the belief, because I've worked through it, that they cannot attach to me unless I deal with them, and I don't. I choose not to, because they
yeah,
know that I can unmake them, and I have that unwavering belief. I'm like, don't fuck with me.
yeah.
I'll
No, I
send
love
you back
that.
to the womb of creation.
I love that. And that's actually how I also kind of go through life. Yeah, those things might exist, but they don't exist for me,
Mm,
because I've done so much work raising my frequency. They only exist in lower frequencies,
mm,
and that's why I do a lot of the work that I do in helping people to, not in that surface level way of raising your frequency, raising your vibration, but actually really raising their energy and frequency field into those higher levels, so that you become the living embodiment of the law of attraction. You don't have to actually go out and do law of attraction. You just are it. You don't have to do manifestation. You just are it.
mm. And that's so beautiful you say that, because I think I don't know if you're in any of Facebook groups, but I tend to sometimes dip in to give advice and help and bits and bobs, and sometimes I have to dip out because it's way too dense in those groups. I mean, oh my god, so much pain, right? I'm like, no, I'm out, guys. But I'll dip in every now and again to share some stuff, and the amount of people that say all you got to do is raise your frequency, and it's true, but a lot of people just aren't doing it. So, what would you say for you, or what you recommend to your clients on some ways of doing? So, when I use the word embody, I usually just mean become and do it, take action. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you see it the same way,
Right.
but
Slightly different, I think. So for me, the to raise your vibration, to start to vibrate at a higher speed, so to speak. So, you've got your low, let's say you've got your low vibration and then you've got your higher vibration. They can't they can't come together, because the lower will always get smashed by the higher, because that's really what it is one going like this and one going slow. So when they come together, the slow one, I don't know why I wanted to tell you that, but it's the inner work that's key, right?
Mm,
So we can do all the stuff like ignoring what's happening in the real world and instead play music and dance around the house, as so much, that's something that's often said to people. Oh, if you want to raise your vibration, put music on and dance.
mm,
Sure, that'll fix it for a few minutes.
mm,
The minute you turn the music off and stop dancing, you're going to go back to your normal place. So it's
mm,
about doing the inner work. It's the
mm,
inner work that raises your vibration.
mm,
It really is, at a permanent level, releasing. I actually call them the trauma twins. So you have a moment of trauma in your life from the day you're born, and in that moment of trauma, you create a tear in your energy field first and foremost, and you create two what I call inner personalities. The
mm,
first one is the way it made you feel, and the second one is the belief, the thing that you made it mean about you,
mm,
which becomes the belief. So you pull in all the energy of the unfelt feeling, or the feeling that you will not express, because you're in a moment of trauma. In the moment of trauma, you stop breathing properly, and that energy just sits there in your energy field, in your
mm,
emotional body. And then the belief, the thing you make it mean about you, becomes a belief that sits in your mental body.
mm,
Those two, I call them the trauma twins.
mhm,
That's what's attracting everything that's coming into your life. They're basically saying, give me more of this. This is my comfort zone. Bring me more, bring me more, bring me more, as I mentioned before. So the way to raise your vibration is to release these energy aspects, which you might call shadow, right? So let's say they're a shadow. So they're like a gray energy.
mm,
You're actually a being of light. And so as you remove these grey energies, these aspects, or these shadow aspects, you leave that space to be taken over by the light that you really are. So you just become lighter and lighter and lighter. And so that's what I mean by raising your vibration. You've got to do that inner work. You can do all of those other things, but really you're just avoiding, you're putting a Band-Aid on it rather than actually dealing with the trigger. That's why it's such a gift. Deal with the trigger. This is how we're all going to ascend into the new earth, however you believe that is, or whatever. To become a light being self by releasing our shadow.
I love the way that you refer to it as releasing, because I also have like so many question marks when I see humans doing what they call as the shadow work. And I always say, well, if you know that energy flows where focus goes, and you're spending all of your time on your shadow, then you are just perpetuating and giving that a reason to stay. Surely what would be the best if you dissolve that with energy. So when I talk about embodiment and I talk about raising frequency, which I don't do that much, to be honest, I'm raising the frequency bit. I talk about 80% energetic work and 20% taking action, because you need both, right? You can't focus on something that's shadow and expect your light to expand. I've never seen the logic there with what humans do here.
I so agree with you. And that's why the trigger thing is so important. And I think that conversation is so important. And I actually teach people to deal with their trigger in the moment. So to first and foremost, obviously, spend 10 minutes a day allowing triggers from the past to be present now so that they can release, because that's what's going to happen with them. There's nothing you need to do. You just invite them in and allow your higher self or your true self to release them. See, all that is taught me very early on that, you know, the law of attraction, how they say, when you ask, it is given. I think that's an Abraham thing. Or, you know, you get what you ask for, all of these sorts of things. What all that is said to me right at the beginning was that the truth of the law of attraction is that you are the physical manifestation of the universe. And every single time you ask for anything, every aspect of you that is out there in the universe, so in other words, everything that's out there in the universe rushes towards you with the answer, or to provide you with what you've asked for, which means that when we sit and say, I want to release my shadow and I'm prepared to sit with it for 5 minutes, what naturally happens is it releases. Life is so much easier than we make it out to be, particularly in the healing world.
I say that all the time. I'm like, guys, this is really fucking incredibly simple if you just allow it to be. And that's the key. I think the other message that was coming strongly through and has been for almost the whole of my work here has been teaching humans how to surrender and just allow.
It's not an easy thing to do, though, is it?
No.
I mean, allowing is just, that was like when they first started wanting to use my voice, I had to be willing to allow them to. And that was the hardest thing ever. Hardest thing ever.
So when you're, oh, sorry, Anne.
That's all right.
Question just popped up. So when you're channeling, because when I'm channeling, I channel like 95% of what I say, because I'm glad about that, because as a human I'm a bit of a dork, so like I'm glad that they come through and they just channel information and power and knowledge and all the things through me, and then 5% they allow me like a little bit of wriggle room to show that I'm a human, my stories, you know.
Yes, exactly.
And so when you are channeling, because I've seen people channel and they change their voice or they change how they look, like how does it work for you when you channel?
Well, you know, that is an absolutely beautiful question, and you probably don't have any idea of how beautiful it is of a question, and I'll tell you why. When this first started happening for me, and I was in, you know, I was still in that place of I still had all my shadow aspects. I had done no healing work. It just was something that started happening to me. So my vibration was quite low. And that's why I talk about frequency and vibration. I prefer to call it frequency. My frequency field was quite low. And so when I first started doing this work, people used to say to me I sounded like an old Russian lady or an old Chinese man, right? So there was an accent.
Wow.
My clients used to argue between themselves of what I sounded like. And my clients, it was very clear to my clients on my face when they started coming through, right? That is no longer what happens because I've done the work, and this is why I had to spend the 10 years focused on doing my own work for myself to be of a higher frequency. So I'm closer to their frequency now. So there's no real separation. That they're here in an instant. They're never not here. It's just become part of who I am. And yet my clients, those people who were with me 10, 15 years ago, they always know when it starts to happen, even though I don't sound different, even though new people don't know that I'm channeling. My clients from back then know because they can see and feel the shift that I make.
Oh wow, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And how another question. These questions are all coming from my team, by the way, as they always do. How do you see these beings that you are? Well, I'll just call them beings for now. But do you see them as an extension of you, aspects of you, or do you see them as cosmic beings? Like how do you see them?
Well, and then that's changed over the years too, because that's got to do with your belief system, right? You show up the way that you believe they're going to show up, which is why this being showed up when my client was there, because that was a being that she believed in, which is why when I'm talking with someone who's very much in their Catholic faith, Jesus will often show up and things like that because it's what they believe. And so initially, right at the beginning, it showed up as various things that I could name because I was looking outside to see what other people were doing because I was trying to figure it out. And people kept saying to me right at the beginning, yeah, but what's their name? And I'd say, well, they said we're all that is, so I'm going to call them all that is. Yeah, but what's their name, right? Because they wanted an Abraham, or they wanted a Seth, or they wanted a Chiron, or Bashar, or there's so many of them, and because I was so unsure of myself and so in my not enoughness, I went through periods where I gave them a name, but all the time in my head, it's always been all that is. It's also God, because oftentimes it's God. I talk to them and say God. But that's because back then I didn't believe that anyone would be able to channel that kind of energy. And there were separate beings, but now there is no separate being. It literally is the field of oneness.
Yeah.
Some say it's like a Akashic field, which is the field of oneness, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So just I have become one with it, and the field of oneness has become one with me. We're the physical manifestation of source. And so the more I lean into that, the more I release the parts of me that aren't that, the more it just is who I am. It's me. I'm about to start a podcast called All That Is Anne, right?
Oh, I love that name.
It's just all that is. It's my name and it's that, and it's whatever in the moment that needs to come through. And I have no doubt every time I have a conversation with someone, I know that whatever I'm saying is something that's going to serve them or whoever's listening or whatever. So, I will walk through life a lot lighter now than I ever did before.
I love that. And I'm at the same stage as well. I still call them my team, and I refer to mine as Cosmic HQ because it just makes me laugh. But yeah, most of the time I just see myself channeling as myself, but drawing on all the different aspects of myself, on power and knowledge and all the things. And I think, like you say, the more that you can just accept that this is just my brilliance, And that's what we're doing, isn't it? We're just stepping into our authentic selves.
Exactly, exactly. About 7 years ago, I joined with a group of other people who were psychics and mediums and all sorts of spiritual card tarot readers and things like that. And we used to have a TV, but it was online TV show every week. And oftentimes there'd be 2 or 3 of us sitting together. And quite often, as I was channeling, the psychic or the medium sitting next to me afterwards would tell me how it showed up for them. And it was fascinating for me. One of them said that it's like you're an island and the energies come in like they're a boat and they dock and spend some time with you, and then they go and the next one comes in and docks,
Oh,
which was
wow.
really fascinating to me. But because, back then it was all about separation. There wasn't that sense of wholeness. But again, as humanity is evolving, we are all evolving. People who start channeling now do it completely differently than we all did back then, because it's easier now, because there's a bigger collective belief system about these things. And it's always, and I keep coming back to it, the very first thing that All That Is ever said to me: everything is a belief.
Mm,
And if you believe it, it's true.
mm,
Whether it's true for everyone is irrelevant. If you believe it, it's true.
mm.
And you'll create it into reality.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
just think, because we now are aware of these things and we're now doing a lot more spiritual and personal development work, and people are opening up to this, and then we had the awakening in 2020, it's so much easier to start downloading our own innate abilities now than
Mm,
it's ever been before.
mm. Yeah, and there's so many more places that you can talk about it as well, whereas it was very taboo. Um, what are your views on kind of like creating wealth and how that shows up in the world? Because I feel like there's still, personally, I feel like there's still a lot of trauma that goes on, especially in our industry as coaches. As I see a lot of young women in these kind of female entrepreneur groups who are constantly striving to get like $1 million in a month as income. What aiming to be billionaires, like that's the absolute goal. And I just wanted to hear your
Yeah.
opinion on that, how you see that.
Well, I actually, it's really interesting, because I traveled that path as well. Obviously, I started my business, and because of my own wounding, I was striving to make money, and I wasn't making money, and then it becomes even more important to make money, and then you come across coaches who talk about having 7 figures and these sorts of things. And you see, these are just new belief systems that we come into as we do our evolution, as we evolve. And then we can sit in that belief system for a long time, which is what often is happening now with this sort of thing, because the whole masculine, feminine, moving away from patriarchy and femininity and all of these sorts of things. It's such a mess.
Mm,
you know People really don't understand what to be masculine means and what to be feminine means, and how it's got nothing to do with the outside. It's an inner thing, and that it's about balancing the two, bringing the two into balance in your own world, and then recreating that into the world. Unfortunately, it's just a bit messy, I think. And I think that affects that sort of thing, because when so many women are in their masculine, but they don't recognize that because they've been told that that's being feminine.
mm,
Feminine power and goddess and all of this sort of words that we're using. But what we're actually doing is using those words to bring more women into what's already happening in the world with men, instead of to empower women in a different way. I don't even know if I'm making sense here, but this is something that I've been pondering for a good 12 years or so, since I've been in the business. And, since I started working with coaches a year into my business, I started working with coaches, and you got to make 7 figures, and you can make 7 figures, and hustle, hustle, hustle. And by the way, don't channel as part of your business. You can't do that. And they're now doing it themselves, right? But back then, coaches were saying that, and that whole conversation about all of these sorts of things is just kind of messy at the moment. And I don't have real clarity. I know there's something about money that we haven't yet seen. And I'm trying to invite it in all the time, because I know there's something really important about money that we haven't seen yet. I just don't know what it is. Because I don't think that we're in a place where we can receive it yet into the world, because I just don't think the ego won't allow it yet, is what I'm hearing. The collective ego of that masculine energy, and that feminine, that's, let's call it murky feminine or dirty feminine, which is really masculine masquerading as feminine. And I don't mean that in a trans way or anything like that. Please don't take me the wrong way there. What I mean is that inner energy of that, the unhealed feminine who's pretending to be the masculine. And I think that's happening a lot, particularly in the circles who think they're in feminine work and they're not.
Yeah, so I agree. And I think the worst thing about those kind of groups is that they all support each other in their trauma. So, if you're a successful person with money, and you've got a successful business, and you're busy all the time in your masculine, right, you will be celebrated. So I remember seeing a post of someone who was very successful with money, but I don't know how she feels. I don't know what her reality is. She's probably lying to herself, all those kind of layers. And she said, "Oh, I've just spent the day doing 14 back-to-back sales calls, and there were so many women congratulating her on her success." And I just thought,
wow,
that to me is my idea of hell. I could never imagine doing 14 back-to-back of anything, unless it was maybe like, I don't know, sleeping or eating cakes or something that's actually,
you're my kind of girl.
How would you
dearie me. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That person has taken on the masculine role and is doing that from masculine, but presenting as doing it from feminine, because that's what's happening in this feminine empowerment, female empowerment world at the moment. It's just a bit of a mess, I think.
Yeah, it's really disjointed. And I think the pillar around wealth, I think, has got to crumble significantly for them to bring in this idea. And what my team always show me on the energetic side of money is that it's not even going to be like that. We'll have a a currency for the frequency. We'll have energy as a frequency, which is basically what we're used to when we first began as souls, right? We didn't have currency. We had energy. I'm going to give you some of my energy, and you're going to give me some of yours. And so I find that really beautiful.
And I think, that's really part of this world in peace that I witnessed, is that for each and every one of us to be in peace, we have to be willing to share what we have and to come together and work together and all of these things. So that actually fits right in, right? Because we wouldn't need currency. We wouldn't need, I just don't even know what that's going to look like, because money is such a big thing. And even, spiritual teachers teaching people how to make money doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't, because, it makes sense if we're spiritual and we're still really stuck in our humanness. Which is not a bad thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but what I'm saying is that humanity is evolving away from Homo sapien into Homo luminous, or whatever you want to call it. Essentially, for me, what that shows up as is a being of light in human form, being of service through their purpose.
Mm.
So where does money fit into that?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it doesn't. And when you become that and just be in service, everything that you require and desire comes to you in some way anyway.
Mm.
But it's that stopping doing the chasing it so that it can come to you. That's where the big problem is. There's such a wide gap between the two things. And you can't really do that unless you do get to a point where you've released that human ego, if you will, enough that you hold no shame, you hold no blame, you hold no blah, 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 blah. And that's done through the inner work. Right? So
Yes.
it all comes back to, I've got to clean up the shit that's inside me, and then I can become this embodiment of manifesting, or the law of attraction, or really my natural way of being. We really are like a houseplant. We are a piece of nature, and we've got to start remembering that and allowing ourselves to come back to that, because our nature is to receive everything that we require, not to receive more than we require and then put it in the bank. Right? It's to receive what we require, and then from that resource give what we have to give. That's how everything in nature works, except us, because of this.
Yeah. It's like trees and how they share resources to weak trees, sick trees, and I agree. You only got to look at nature to have all your answers. Well, actually, no, nature, animals, and little children. I've
Oh,
got.
when I'm talking about nature, I'm actually talking about animals as well,
Oh,
and
okay, yeah.
right? Because one animal dies for another to eat it, which then dies for another to eat it. This is the circle of life. And so if we remember that we're a piece of nature, we die and something eats us, right? So there's no, we just don't get out of that. We just have to remember, I am nature. I'm a physical manifestation of source energy, and so is everything else that's ever existed. So, but it's our ego and our mind that separates us and makes us think that we are more than that. And yet, how could you be more than that? Right?
Yeah. And the other thing is, my team just want to share is that the bigger reason that we do the inner work is not really to even experience or to receive everything we want, because all of those things are beautiful on our human journey. But really, it's because we're looking after Mother Gaia. So when we go back to the earth, we are being consumed by her. So the more that we can do this healing and cleansing, we are literally physically as well as emotionally, energetically changing the world.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes.
T.
What a beautiful and profound insight that is.
Mm,
Because as you say that, I'm seeing the earth is consuming these hurt, broken beings that we've become. It's no wonder that it wants to recreate as well, you
mm.
know? Oh, that's just beautiful. Thank you for that.
That's okay.
Beautiful.
My team want me to ask a question about your pursuit of happiness and also touch on the inner work. So, when you were looking for happiness, what did you find out about that yourself? And how did you find it for yourself?
Well, so it was about 15 years ago, and coincidentally, for some reason, there was a bit of a resurgence in happiness stuff and positive psychology. That's when positive psychology started to be talked about in the mainstream,
Mm,
actually. And so I went down that route of looking at all the positive psychology. I read lots of books about positive psychology. A couple of years after that, all the books about retraining your brain started to come out. So I read those as well. And the only thing I really learned from all of that, every single one of the positive psychology and brain retraining ones also talked about meditation.
mm,
So really, the real thing that stuck with me from all of that, and I probably did that for a year or more, was take the time to sit and get quiet and be present in the moment.
Mm.
And that really is the key, right? Just because we've got to get used to being alone with our own self and be willing to look at the thoughts that come to us when we're alone with ourselves and clean those up. It's the same work, right? It's the same thing. When I spend, I don't now, but I used to spend, because I wanted to retroactively heal the trauma from my past. When I talk about trauma, I'm talking about very subjective trauma. It can be something as little as, I've had people I've been working with who one of their major trauma about not being worthy is because their mother said no to them when they asked for something. It can be as small as that, right? And it can also be, I've had some childhood sexual abuse myself. It can be those larger things. So for me, trauma is always subjective. And so when I first started doing this work, I would take time to sit every day, to breathe deeply, to become really present with myself, and to just invite up whatever wanted to come up in that moment, either as a memory or a thought or a feeling, and to just be present with that until it released, because they only come up because they're ready to release. That's why someone shows up in front of you and says something to you that triggers you, because the part of you that wants to release, the trigger that wants to release, has invited that in. And so yeah, just getting quiet and getting happy with being present with yourself and being willing to see whatever comes up and curious about it. Where's that from? What happened there? Why am I feeling that? But not to the point of like some of the current teachings around it, not to the point of getting a journal out and writing about all the bad things that your mother ever said to you and all of these sorts of things. No, that's when we make it more complicated than it needs to be. It's about simply noticing it and being willing to allow the part of you that can heal it, because it can, to just release it, help you to release it. It really is as easy as breathing, and breathing is very important to it, because when we have moments of trauma, we stop breathing properly. No adult breathes like they did when they were a baby in the cot. We've seen, people show the stomach moves up and down and they just are breathing beautifully. The minute you have a moment of trauma, again, subjective, your breathing becomes more shallow. So we stop breathing properly for the rest of our lives. And so the important thing is to start. That's why breath work, again, is coming into the fore in the last year or two as well, because it's the breath that helps to release these things. The willingness to see them, and then the breath to help release them.
I also love your explanation about meditation, because I think this is another area that a lot of people get wrong and make way more complicated, and make it worse for themselves. I am always telling people that you don't necessarily need to meditate in the way that someone's told you to meditate. Don't go onto YouTube and just find some random track of some so-called guru and sit with that, because you do not know that that person is a clear channel. It's almost like when you sleep with someone, right? You don't know whether they've got some kind of disease or something. You would protect yourself from that. So why would you just consume a meditation track of some person you don't know? And I am not. I'm also not a follower of other people. So people like Abraham Hicks and Chiron, I do not follow or do not consume for many, many reasons. But I just prefer just to be in my own little world. I call it my rainbow bubble.
I think that's really important, and I think that's key as well. When I first started, because of my self-doubt and all of this sort of stuff, I mean, literally, psychics would come up to me at psychic fairs and things and say, "Oh, you've got to shut down your channel, blah blah blah." Whereas my all that is, it always said to me, no, you're protected. If you're open all the time, you're actually protected. It's the same with your heart. If you open your heart fully and completely, you will never be hurt again. And yet all of us are caging up our hearts because we've had some heartbreak or something, you know? So it's counterintuitive. But because of my self-doubt and these sorts of things, when this initially started happening, I did follow Abraham Hicks for a little while, but then I'd had enough of it. I'd gotten what I needed, which was confirmation that what was happening to me was a real thing. And some of the teachings, of course, I mean, they're great teachings at the beginning of the journey. And yet I still see people that were in the same group with me. Back then, Abraham, there wasn't the social media thing. There was forums and things, right? Yahoo forums and stuff like that. And so I joined one of those groups, and I think I didn't know, there was no one in there who was from Australia at the time. This was before they did The Secret and all of that. But I still see people now who are still in there, still religiously following the teachings, which is not what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to be like a honeybee, hop over to this flower and get what you need from it and then move on to the next one. But also I see the channels that I've been observing since those days not changing, not evolving. And yet I know they've evolved, but they're not presenting in that way, perhaps because of the money. Do you know what I mean? So that's very interesting to me as well, because I know that they've evolved. I'm very aware of it because we're all one, and I can channel most of those energies because it's part of the one as well. And yet I see, and I understand it from a business perspective, that if you if you start channeling something and the information is so great and it brings in a lot of money, then you want to stay on that same theme. Perhaps in your private life, there's a whole different thing going on because you're evolving. The whole point of being a human being is to evolve, not to stay in the same. So I understand exactly what you're saying. And I no longer, I mean, I don't even read people's books or anything anymore. I mean, I started to, once I finished writing this, because this actually information came to me when I first started doing this work. And it's taken me this long to actually put it into a book, because I knew back then I was going to write a book, right? That the teachings were going to be put in a book, but I had to do my 10 years to get my stories, because it's through story, as you said, that we really impact other people and empower them. So yeah, so that's why it took so long to do it, but well worth it, and unfortunate circumstances that brought it about this year. So
do you want to speak about that, or?
Well, I'm happy to, because it's been a great lesson for me. So halfway through last year, my mother had lung cancer, and she had a brain tumor and a couple of things, and she had an operation, and so I moved into her home to care for her. And so in December last year, she passed. And my son, my adult son, so my first child, he had been living with bowel cancer for 3 years, and he passed exactly a month after.
Oh, wow.
So it was a horrendous time for me, as you can imagine. The woman who was my mother, and then the child that made me a mother, within a month of each other. And within a month of that, this book came through.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he showed up and encouraged me to write a particular chapter in the book.
Oh, wow.
A very personal one about our karmic tie. So and that was really the catalyst for this book finally being able to come through me, because until then I had tried over and over. I paid a fortune to book coaches,
Mm,
to never end up with a book because it just would not come through in the way that it was meant to. But
mm,
what happened was I joined this book writing container. It was a compulsion. I felt compelled, and it was ridiculous because I was arguing. I can't. I'm grieving.
mm,
And I have been so badly judged by my family for the fact
mm,
that it happened. And so I didn't want to do it, but I
mm.
couldn't do it. And it just poured out of me in literally a matter of weeks and published within months. So
Wow.
it when the time's right?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
can't stop.
And that's what I always say to people, that there is no way in the world that you will ever miss out on what's meant for you. Like, they will close everything down around you if something's not right, or it just won't happen if it's not meant to. And I guess for
Yeah.
you, like, almost like you had to go through a really big case of sacrifice, right, in
Yeah.
order to get this message out to the world. And I think a lot of us have had to do that in so many
Yeah.
different ways. And
Yeah.
that is
Absolutely.
almost sometimes people's blocker. I'm not ready to do that or accept that. And again, such a beautiful yet poignant yet heartbreaking case for you of surrender, right?
Yeah. And also because, my mission, world peace through inner peace,
Mm,
the ability that I now have to maintain my sense of inner peace
mm,
be, throughout this experience, I've been able to actually witness within myself that ability
mm.
to go, you know what, I am the embodiment of what I've written in this book.
Yeah,
And I wrote the book as the embodiment of it without truly, 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 until just recently, kind of going, oh my God,
yeah,
I had to go through this in order to become
mm,
the embodiment of these teachings so that I can now truly stand in front of you and say, I am the embodiment of these teachings. In my presence, you will come into this energy.
yeah. Well,
And
the
that's what
universe doesn't want actors. It wants real life people, not actors.
exactly, exactly. Oh my goodness. And my brother came to visit me yesterday and we were discussing things. And, there's a situation happening in my life at the moment with my son's children and
Mm,
their mother. And I was whinging about that, as you do, saying, oh, it's not fair. Why is that happening to me? Because I'm a human being. And
mm.
he said, it's almost like you're having to prove that what you wrote about in that book. And I was like, oh, of course. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
all the fear around it, all the angst around it just lifted.
Mm,
Of course. There's
mm.
nothing going wrong here.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my greatest sayings is, I am perfect and it is perfect. Everything is working out perfectly. Even when it doesn't look or feel like it, it,
Yeah,
it just is. If you can just
absolutely.
accept your reality as it is, then everything will just be easy.
Well, that's
In
exactly right.
inverted
And
commas.
yeah, and so, obviously I was about to say we're tuned into the same thing, but I mean that's absolutely the truth because it's the field of oneness, right? So we're just picking up some of the same stuff. And one of the most important teachings in this book is where all that is told me initially and tells everyone, you were born perfect and you haven't changed yet.
Mm,
You're a physical manifestation of the universe and the universe never gets it wrong. So
mm,
that means you can't get it wrong.
mhm.
So
Yeah. So much truth. So much truth. So
amazing.
I'm very conscious of time, and I feel like we could probably speak for a whole week and not get bored. But
I'm
I'm sure
sure
you've
we
got
could.
I'm sure you've got things to do in your 3D reality that take time off and things like that. So where can people find you if they really want to, get to know? Obviously we'll share links and we'll share your book link or whatever we need to do, but where can people find
Thank
you if they want to?
So obviously there's my website, which is annealeckson.com, nice and easy. But I like to hang around on Facebook, either on my profile or my page. You can always find me on Facebook somewhere. And again, it's just my name.
Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, then we're going to say goodbye to Anne. I'm going to start recording in a moment, Anne, and then we'll just have a quick chat afterwards. So, thank you to everyone listening today. And Anne, if it's okay with you, we'll probably put this on Facebook as well at some point as our video, because I think people sometimes like to see videos as well as audio. So,
Yeah.
we could talk about that. So, thank you so much. It's been amazing to have you and a pleasure to get to know you and meet you again in this life. So, yeah, we'll chat in a moment.
I'm
I'll just start
thrilled. I'm
recording.
actually thrilled to have this conversation with you. It's been great. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm going to start recording now. Over and out.